All right, welcome back. We're going to do sighting for angle on this next step. So I'll be using the same setup as I did last time. I'm going to move forward from the point where you saw me stop on the last video, just so I don't have to start over from the beginning. Last time I was using this as my unit. And remember, I was picturing that flat piece of glass in front of me. That flat glass is going to be really important for sighting for angle as well. You'll be seeing different angles than what I'm seeing. That's why I gave that front piece that showed you what I was looking at. But keep in mind what I was seeing, and then you'll see how I transfer that here. So I've got a bunch of stuff already on my paper. I'm going to now check and see how I did in my initial drawing for my angles. So we're starting here where you can see how this actually works from the artist's point of view. There are lots and lots of important angles in this still life. So the most prominent one is the pestle angle. So we have that angle here. How do I make sure that I get that correct on my final piece? Well, I'm going to do sighting for angles. So the main angles that I'm looking at are this one here. We also have some angles on the jar here and here, and you can see that these are not straight. So straight is here, and straight is here. We're instead going to be looking at the angles here. This that I'm doing here, where I'm going across like this, is called vertical scanning. This is horizontal scanning, and these things can be really useful. For instance, as I'm looking at my horizontal scanning, I'm keeping my pencil completely horizontal, and I take a look, and the top of the pestle and the bottom of the connection of the handle for the compost container are in line. So I need to check and make sure that I've got them in line in my final piece. The top of the garlic container is kind of in line with this edge of the pestle, so that's another thing to take note of, and so on as we go down the drawing. And again, things can line up vertically too. For instance, you can see that the edge here of the garlic container does not line up with the top of the compost thing. Instead, it's about, if I go from here to here, it's about 2/3 of the way in, so I can check that. So you'll watch me do that as I move forward here, but I wanted to give you an artist's eye view first so that you could see what it is that I'm seeing as I move forward. Let's get started. First angle I'm going to check is this one, because I actually have two different angles drawn. I have an up angle and I have a down angle. I'm pretty sure the down angle is correct, but I can't know for sure unless I check it. So I start out straight up and down, and then I'm going to, just to give it to you from your point of view, I'm going to swivel as though my pencil were the hands on a clock. And a lot of people use the metaphor of a clock to help them with this, so that when I'm going to start with my center where I'm gripping the pencil, right on the corner there, close one eye, I'm against my flat glass, and I'm going to turn the pencil until it lines up with that angle. Now, if I were using the clock metaphor, it's pointing to about 10 o'clock. I'm going to then swivel my body, holding this angle correct, consistent, and check it against this. And sure enough, it's that lower angle that is correct. Most people, without experience, do not get angles even close to correct. We have a tendency to mentally look straight down, and so most people would have exaggerated that angle this way and have to correct it up. Because I've been doing this a long time, I'm less likely to make that mistake. So I've checked this line, now I'm going to check this line. Even though they are parallel in real life, they may look slightly unparallel on the page because of something called perspective, and we're not going to cover that today. It's still at about that 10 o'clock angle. I'm going to tip it up a little bit from where it was and move it up just a hair, but that's a lot closer. Now I'm going to check this one. Again, I start at that corner with my grip like here, and I'm going to swivel it like the hands on the clock. You can see I'm against my flat plane of glass, and there is my angle. If I poke through, that's going to give me a very different result, and we have a tendency to try to poke through so that we are in 3 dimensions the same as what we're looking at, but we are trying to convert it to a 2-dimensional plane. so we need to make sure we're staying against that flat glass. And I'm going to check it here. And again, I'm experienced, so this angle is already correct. I would expect 98% or more of my drawing 1 students to get that wrong, and probably 60% of my drawing 2 students to get that wrong. I'm now checking the bottom. Again, it's correct, so I can leave that alone. It's correct at this upper point, not this lower one. So I'm going to clarify that just a little. I need to check the pestle, so I'm starting here where it intersects the mortar, and I'm going to swivel. And again, I'm against that flat glass. I'm not poking through or doing anything funky like that. So I'm looking at that. That's at about a 130 angle, and so that's going to be here. Slightly different than what I had. So I'm going to draw that a little darker there, and that's the angle. I'm not sure about the placement because I never measured for placement on that one. I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So I'm going back to my unit here, and I'm checking from this corner to the container, and it's about 1.5 units. So here's my unit, 1.5. I'm pretty darn close, so I'm happy with that. In terms of how tall that is, I'm going to go from the bottom to here and measure that in units. So I grab my unit, go from the bottom, 1, 2, and a little. So here's my unit from the bottom, 1, 2, and it's probably a little too tall there, so I'm going to move that down. But I've got to keep the distance the same, so there we go. That's it. Lots of confusing lines at this point, so I'm going in with my eraser to clarify and make sure I have that right. I'm going to finish out that ellipse, which is an angled ellipse, so I can check that angle as well. That's correct. And so I make my ellipse here. This angle here is different than this angle here because the pestle gets bigger as it goes down, so I have to cite that separately. And again, I've been doing this a long time, so most people will be making more corrections than this when they are starting out. Don't feel bad about that. That's just how it goes. So doing some vertical and horizontal scanning, I'm trying to locate this. And as I look at that, it's hitting here, which is here. So that's got to come out quite a bit. And remember, I was having trouble getting this wide enough. That tells me this needs to come out just a hair. So everything is flexible still at this point until I'm sure that all of my elements are in the right place and that they relate to each other correctly. Everything is mobile. And that's why it's a little hard to see on the videos because I'm drawing very lightly. I'm actually drawing darker than I normally would at this stage just so you can see it on the video. Let's see, I want to check how big this is compared to my unit. Now this is the smaller thing. So rather than dividing my unit in parts, I'm going to measure this and then see how many of them go across my unit. And that will tell me, is it a third, is it a fourth? So I'm measuring this guy right here. He's tiny, tiny, right there. Now I'm going back and saying 1, 2.5 of those fit. So if I divide this in half and then a quarter again, so that's going to be 1, 2.5. So that's the right size. Again, I was pretty close. And don't feel bad if you're not very close. Just say, oh yay, that's making the video go by faster. So I could measure, this is a swoopy round thing. So measuring that angle is tricky. If you've taken any pre-calculus, you'll have tried to find the angle of the slope. And so it's a little bit tricky. I am just going to estimate it. And see where things cross other things. So this line here, this guy crosses this guy here. That's going to be about here. So that leads me to there. It comes out around here, swoops across, goes way out past that. And this guy here, I'm going to measure an angle from here to here so that those are in line. And again, it's not horizontal, it's here. So there's the center of both of those. That's going to put this other knob out here, checking it's about the same size as this, so I can measure off of that. That will go there, and that gets me the rest of that curve. So you can see sometimes when you're working on one thing, you need to check a bunch of other things to get that one thing correct, and it's totally fine. It's a little hard to keep track of where you are when you're starting out that kind of thing, but it does get easier with practice. Drawing is something where practice makes a huge difference. You're not either good at drawing or bad at drawing. You are getting better or not improving, depending on how much you're working. So give yourself the grace and the time to learn it rather than beating yourself up for not being perfect right off the bat, because nobody's perfect. And we have erasers, so let yourself use that. Of course, there's lots of fun things we can do, not letting ourselves use erasers and enjoying our journey and the visibility of our journey on the final piece. Using pen is a great way to do that. But all right, so that showed you some vertical and horizontal scanning. Just to recap on the horizontal scanning, things that I'm looking for, I come up from the bottom here, and the first thing I hit should be this corner, which it is. As I go forward, the second thing I hit should be that corner, and it is. Third thing I hit should be this. So I'm coming up, boom, yes, I hit that, so I'm coming up, and yes, I hit this before I hit this. It could drop just a hair. So I'm going to drop that down a little bit. Next thing I should hit will be this top corner, which I do, and then we're going to hit the horizontal of this, which is not quite horizontal on this, so I've got to drop this down a little, get this line straight across here, and get that curve corrected. That curve is distorted inside the glass, and I'll deal with that when I get to details, but right now I just want to draw through it to make sure everything lines up okay. Alright, so that's it for horizontal and vertical scanning. My recommendation when you are starting out is to use sighting for size only. Eventually you'll be able to combine the two, but at first they're going to give you very, very different results. One other thing I meant to mention on the sighting for angle, it doesn't have to be an angle that's in existence in the object. You can also measure the angle between objects. So I could go from here to here, check that angle, swivel it around, check that it is correct. And that tells me that the relationship in size and placement between those is correct. If this doesn't come out the same, then I know I need to make some adjustments. It tells me I need to check my sizes and my angles once again. And these angle relationships are actually part of what leads your eye through a drawing. I've even got some angles with how the coriander falls on the page, so I could draw a little bit of light work to just give me a sense of where that's going to be eventually when I draw those in. So there we go. I'll check these guys also. Yeah, a little lower on that one. And this one is about right. So there we go. Sighting for angle. Thanks.